Hello and welcome to the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. My partner in crime, as always, Kory Waldron, and two special guests today, Dennis Dow, OTG, and David McGraw, Sunny in Phoenix podcast. What's up, guys?
Hey, what's going on?
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you two on. I like partner in crime, Nick. You know, don't let the feds know.
PIC. Got to change it up a little bit. But today we're talking Suns. Before we get started, you can check out all of our shows and our previews on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, and Dash Radio. But before we talk about the Suns for this upcoming season, we're going to look back at last year, 21-61, worst record in the league. You know, Bledsoe was traded earlier in the year, last in offensive rating, last in defensive rating. What were your thoughts on the Suns from last season?
Well, it was a lot of fun. And by a lot of fun, I mean it was pretty rough. As someone that watched all 82 games, it was pretty rough. But, you know, that's what you expect. You think you have a starting point guard, and then you have to play Mike James and Isaiah Cannon. Isaiah Cannon was fine, but specifically Mike James and Tyler Ulis. You know, Josh Jackson looked solid at the end of the season. The beginning was a little rough. There's some positives, but besides, you know, Dragan Bender and Marquese Chriss not being very good and taking a step back and not having a point guard. It was rough, but definitely deserving of last in the league.
Yeah, I mean, they were just as you know, you said the Suns are pretty much the worst team in the league last season. Even though I think some of that was due to, you know, I think they wanted to be the last team in the league. You know, Devin Booker continued to look like he could be a superstar. As he mentioned, you know, I think that was probably, to me, something that was really rough for the Suns. It's just Marquese Chriss and Dragan Bender just don't look like they're going to get better anytime soon. And it just seemed like they were, you know, they understood what situation they were in, which was we need to, you know, improve our draft status and possibly go for the top pick, and they ended up getting it.
Yeah, I mean, last year, as you mentioned, I mean, shout out to you for watching all 82 games. I mean, you deserve a round of applause. That's rough. I can't imagine watching my team just, you know, play and get obliterated for most nights. No offense. Obviously, Devin Booker is still fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, last year, I think Devin Booker is the highlight, obviously. I mean, I think we can agree that if he can play just some sort of average defense, he's going to be a top shooting guard in this league for years to come. I mean, this kid is still really young. The offense is there. I like guys like TJ Warren. I feel like TJ Warren had a pretty good year. I mean, it's just you know, this roster is just so rough. I mean, a lot of guys who I just don't see having long NBA careers. Josh Jackson started off really rough last year. I think he had a really good second half, or he at least bounced back somewhat. But I think, I mean, you just for sure know Devin Booker's a part of the future. And that was really the only highlight. We'll talk about the highlight, but that was really the only thing I can take away from last season.
David, do you think Devin Booker was frustrated last season having another, you know, losing season, being last in the NBA?
He was definitely frustrated. He wants to win. He has a winner's mentality, and he is not okay with not winning, really. And, you know, he played only like 50, low 50s games.
54, 54 games.
So it was like 52, 54, something like that. But, yeah, he was out a bit, and he was pretty frustrated. He felt like people thought he was probably like he was getting set to try and tank, but he was having issues. He started out all right, you know, defensively. He was really putting some effort in there at the beginning of the season, but you know, he still has a lot of work there to work on. But I mean, he got his max contract extension. He's here for the next 5 years at least. So yes, he's the future.
Dennis and Kory, any thoughts on Devin Booker and his frustration in Phoenix?
Well, I mean, it's funny. It's like if you look up on YouTube, if you go to like NBA Fights 2018, a lot of videos come up with the Suns, and a lot of them come up with Devin Booker. You know, so I think it's one of those things where I think that he, when he plays, like he definitely plays with a chip on his shoulder. And I think ever since he came into the league, like he's always a player that seems ready to take respect if he doesn't feel like he's getting it. Like he's got up in Zach Randolph's face. He's gone after.
Take some cojones to do that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is a couple of plays from last season were just situations where a fight was started because the Suns turned the ball over and Booker was the one running him down, and he just whacks somebody, gives him a really hard foul. Like that was the case with Kory Brewer last season. That's what led to Booker pushing Larry Nance Jr. And there were a couple of other instances too where that happened, where just frustration, which I could understand Booker's frustration. He's playing really well. He's scoring, he's getting buckets, and the rest of the team isn't able to really help him win the game.
Yeah, I think that you make a great point, Dennis. I mean, I can see it from a different perspective as well, as maybe like because they're so bad that, and Devin Booker knows he's the face of the franchise, and maybe he like doesn't on purpose, pick a fight. I mean, like in baseball, like managers sometimes get tossed just to try and get the guys to show some life. So I can see it too from the perspective of maybe like it's his way of trying to get everybody to be a little bit more unified. Like if he stands up to Zach Randolph, the guys go, oh shit, like Devin Booker's got balls. Like he's not afraid of this guy. We need to like rally around our teammate. So I can see it from that, but I mean he's definitely frustrated. I mean, anytime you're winning 21 games in a season and you're just you're not even really competing. It would be different if you were losing and they were close games, but oftentimes, I mean, the Suns were out of most games, at least the ones I watched in the first half.
Yeah, and obviously, like we mentioned earlier, the Suns had the mindset to lose and get a high pick in the draft. But on a positive note, what was the highlight of last season for the Suns?
Probably how the rest of Josh Jackson's season panned out, especially with so much negatives. He started out and he just did not look very good. He kind of was almost playing power forward at a couple of spots and having to guard some guys that he just had no business guarding. But maturity maturity is really where he was able to get benched and have terrible games, but keep on working. And I'm really excited about his work ethic. He wants to be good. He wants to be better. And I'm really excited for him going forward alongside Booker.
Yeah, I kind of went the opposite way with that in terms of just the Suns fighting everybody. Like literally, you've got Devin Booker, Larry Nance Jr., Devin Booker, Enes Kanter, Marquese Chriss pushing Ricky Rubio, Troy Daniels going after Will Barton, Josh Jackson and Taurean Prince, Tyler Ulis and KCP, Dragan Bender and Nick Young, TJ Warren and Robin Lopez.
Some of those were overblown fights, but
and I mean that's the thing. Nobody's going to throw any punches, but it was just interesting to see how much the Suns as a group, they were not a great team, but they just had this mindset of like, we're not taking any crap from anybody. And in a lot of these scenarios, like a lot of times the Suns were the aggressor. And that's really interesting to see. I think for some guys, it's a good thing, like they really want to, they want to win. They want to be good. They want to be respected. Like I think the Troy Daniels, Will Barton problem was due to some comments Will Barton made on a podcast, where I think he mentioned something about Phoenix, and I think Troy Daniels, said something to him about it. But I think overall, I think the highlight, though, seriously for the Suns is just I think they had a year to just see what they had with their young guys. And I think it's given them maybe more understanding of who they can keep and who they should be building for the future with.
Yeah, for me, it's it's also Josh Jackson. But because David has already pretty much clarified for the same reasons why I thought it's Josh Jackson, I'll go with like my runner-up, which is TJ Warren. Like, I really liked TJ Warren last year. Maybe I'm oddly high on him for no reason. I don't know, David, what you think about TJ Warren, but I mean, like, for a guy who can't shoot threes, he's still like rather efficient offensively. I mean, he averaged 19.6 points per game, and I get it. When you're on a bad team, your numbers slightly get inflated. But I mean, he really got better. I feel like. I mean, the defensive plus minus is going to be bad when the team gets blown out often. And his defensive rating when he was on the floor per 100 possessions was the worst it's been his first 4 years. But he's still 24, and as a six man off the bench, I kind of like TJ Warren, or maybe even if he raises his value some more, they flip him and trade him, because you do have Josh Jackson also as a wing. So for me, it was TJ Warren.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one picked Devin Booker. I mean, the highlight for me is definitely
easy.
Yeah, well, I'm going with the easy one. I thought also one thing I like from Booker, he improved as a playmaker last year. You saw him a little bit in the pick and roll, initiate the offense, which I think is big for him and the Suns. Versatility is always big, and then his three-point percentage went up, and being a shooter like he is, that's something nice to see. Maybe this year can get closer to 40%. So Booker's the highlight for me. But going to the negative side, what would be the biggest disappointment of last season?
Well, Marquese Chriss came into the season out of shape, and he's a really easy one. There's so many easy pickings. The biggest disappointment, because I hated so much, was just the first 3 games with Bledsoe. I really thought that we weren't going to be as bad, and I thought Bledsoe was getting flipped. But for him to put no effort and let Lonzo Ball be ridiculous on him in his second game, like that was super frustrating, and that puts this like. I have such a bad taste in my mouth from that, and it's Bledsoe. That entire thing, I can be mad because Marquese Chriss and Dragan Bender didn't look that good, and I can be mad about a whole lot of other stuff. But the most disappointing thing is just that whole scenario, and I mean, or the team is better for it to get him out of there, but man, that was super frustrating.
The whole hair salon situation.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I would actually I would that same issue was what came up for me. However, it was the other side of it. I think just the way management came off in the Bledsoe situation, just as an outside person that's not, as that doesn't follow the Suns as much on a regular basis. I just thought their management looked terrible in that situation, because they had blatantly tanked the year before. They had shut down Bledsoe and basically sent him home even though he was healthy. And for them to say, like, he's not being a leader, he needs to be more of a leader, and we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that, and I just thought that they came off poorly, and that's the thing, is I think in the way that things go in the NBA these days, you have to be really careful as management what you say, because he was very critical of Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, and an agent to a lot of different guys, and that can really affect their ability to possibly get guys down the line, free agents. And I just think as well, though, that anytime a team tanks, I think that they lose the moral high ground when it comes to dealing with their players. Now, granted, Bledsoe could have handled things better, and I think his struggles in Milwaukee, if anything, maybe should give Suns fans a feeling of relief that they're not paying him what they were. So I would just say that. I would say management came off badly in that situation.
I'm just going to go different than you guys. I'm going to say the acquisitions of Elfrid Payton and Greg Monroe. Obviously, Monroe was kind of like just the toss in to get rid of Eric Bledsoe and the contract. And he really didn't play that bad when he played, Greg Monroe, but I mean, he just didn't play unless Tyson Chandler was down. Or whatever the case may be. So that kind of fell apart. He obviously plays no defense. And then Elfrid Payton, they took a flyer for 19 games to see if he could be anything special, from maybe recreate some of his early shining moments in Orlando, where he played defense, has some triple doubles, and he was horrible for the Suns. I mean, his numbers are terrible. Shot 43% from the field, 20% from three. He just didn't look good, didn't really gel with the guys, and obviously he's already gone. But for me, it's those two acquisitions.
I'm going to go with the easy ones that David already mentioned, Dragan Bender and Marquese Chriss. I thought the Suns would hit on one of these guys, but now it looks like it's unsure if either of them will be a rotation piece moving forward for the Suns. Bender was a guy I was kind of high on. I thought he just needed some time to develop, but it's looking pretty bad for him right now, and I'm unsure about what his future is going to be like in the NBA. Maybe it could turn around with the new head coach we'll talk about later, but moving on from last season, looking at this year's rankings, the Suns are coming in at number 24 in the OTG Power Rankings. Now, is this too high, too low, fair? What are your thoughts?
If you would have said 27, I'd be like, you know what? Like we haven't really proved much. That's fair. I think 24 is totally fair too. Obviously, if I would have said that lower was fair, I think that you have Devin Booker, a guy who plays at an all-star caliber level and is efficient and continues to get better. If he continues to get better, which he should, even just adding Ayton and having Josh next to him, Josh being able to, not have to be a main scoring threat and just be able to play stellar defense and, play make and things like that. I think that we will be all right. We added Mikal Bridges, who I'm super excited for. We signed Trevor Ariza to kind of a veteran contract, but he will be a positive influence on some of these younger guys. And I'm glad for punishment, but I'm hoping that Marquese Chriss, he had a real wake up call. He's been working out a ton this summer. He looks like he's in shape, and I'm hoping that he can come in and show some of the reasons why people were starting to get high on him in his first season.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a fair ranking. I think the Suns, they're probably the second worst team in the West, but I think they could fight for a playoff spot in the East. They could have, and that's the thing too, is I think you actually could have had them higher. Like I know in my individual rankings for OTG, I had them 22 actually ahead of the Cavs and the Hornets. But I think overall, I think we had them as a site. We had the Cavs and Hornets ahead of them. I just think that with the way their roster is constructed at the moment, I think Devin Booker is just as good as the best player on the Cavs or Hornets. I think he's just as good as Kevin Love or Kemba Walker. And I think they have I think the Suns, I think what I liked the most about what they've done is they have a lot of depth on the wing right now. You said they added Mikal Bridges, they got Trevor Ariza in addition to Josh Jackson, Devin Booker. That's a pretty solid wing rotation. And I think that they will be better this season. And as I said, I think although I'm pretty sure they'll be the second worst team in the West. I think that when you compare them to some of the teams from the East, I think they would stack up quite well.
I love DeAndre Ayton. I think that him and Booker are going to be a fun pairing. I think it's slightly too high, only because, we just haven't seen them put it together yet on the court. They're coming off a 21-win season. I need to for me personally, I kind of need to see them be a better team before I'm ready to say they're a better team. I think this team is still around the bottom five. Obviously this is just, bottom six, so they're right there still. But I think this is just, for me, slightly too high. I think they're more so in the 26 to, maybe one spot back, 25 to 28 range.
Yeah, I think you could say it's fair. You could make the argument that maybe it's a touch too high, but I think it's right around in the range they'll finish, because this is a team that's probably going to get better as the season progresses unless they go the tanking route with all the young pieces they have. Moving on to additions, new head coach Igor Koskov. I did the best on his pronunciation of his name, but Thoughts on him? You know, he's been in the NBA since 2001, assistant coach. A lot of credit last season for Ricky Rubio's jump with the Jazz. What are your thoughts on the new head coach, David?
Kukoshkov is great. We're really excited for him as Suns fans specifically. He did a lot of really cool things in Eurobasket, and watching some of the plays that he had run for that Slovenia team that was able to win. You can see how that was already starting to be implemented a little bit here or there if you watch some of the Summer League stuff that was going on. Summer League is pretty rough sometimes to watch, but there's movement, there's, kind of like some handoffs, some different stuff like that. I'm very excited for him. I think that he has a track record as an assistant of being in very good situations, and I think he's gonna do some really good things coaching this season.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I actually, when I heard the name that they had hired him, I wasn't sure who he was, and then just in getting a chance to learn more about him, and finding out that he coached that Slovenian team that won, the Eurobasket, and just some of the creative things he did with Doncic and Dragic. I think you have to be excited if you're a Suns fan, just because I think anybody that can. I think it's all about getting the most out of your players, and Slovenia was not, a team that was favored to win that tournament. So for him to be able to get that out of his players, and also the respect that he has in the league in terms of just his some of the coaches that he's had the opportunity to work for, I think that has to make you feel good that he can come to your team and establish a winning culture and get the most out of the players.
Yeah, another like you said, this was a name that I wasn't necessarily very familiar with. Obviously, he coached Luka Doncic, which is why, like, at first I kind of thought maybe Doncic was going to end up going to Phoenix because they had that relationship already. Obviously, it didn't happen. This is a guy who's been, an assistant coach in the league in the past. Actually for 17 years, 18 years. He's been around for a while, and he's actually assistant coach in Phoenix from 2008 to 2012, 2013 season. So he's already been in Phoenix. I like it. I mean, you had to mix it up. I mean, Earl Watson, obviously that didn't work out, and then Jay Triano, right? Is that his name?
Yep.
Yes.
He's just an interim head coach. I never think those. I never think much of anything when you're an interim head coach. I just figure you're just passing the time. And I think Greg Korachek, as I mentioned on the Knicks pod that we did, I just think he's terrible. So this could be the first defensive-minded coach they've had in a while, and maybe he can help change this culture and just get guys playing a little bit harder.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of excitement around Igor, and just like you guys mentioned, the respect around the league and what he's done internationally. I think if I was a Suns fan, I'd be pretty excited. But moving on to the draft, number 1 overall, they selected DeAndre Ayton. Obviously, a lot of potential, a lot of physical gifts. Thoughts on selecting Ayton with the number 1 pick?
I thought he was the clear choice. I think that the argument could have been made for Doncic, but with everything that had been said by the front office, even or right around when Igor was getting signed to be the coach, I think just a combination of that and just how everything went, it just felt obvious. We needed some sort of big. When you have an opportunity at, a guy that is, yes, a center, and while, back to the basket center, like old school centers aren't necessarily a huge priority in the league right now. He is a guy that shoots really well from the free throw line in his career at Arizona. He showed some jump shots, showed a lot of ability. Of course, he's going to need to work on his defense, but I really think he will. Like, when he does give the effort, it looks like he's fine. He just doesn't necessarily have the instincts. I think he has a really good chance to be a very special player.
Yeah, I think when it came down to the choice, I think it was more. I think the Suns drafted for fit. I personally, I think I would have taken Doncic. However, as David mentioned, I think the Suns wanted, a big that they felt comfortable moving forward with, and I think in terms of that, I think Ayton is a guy who, showed not only can he do those things that a big guy normally does. I think he's shown that he has a stroke from outside. I think he can, he's able to shoot. He's got a nice jump shot. At Arizona, he shot 34% from three. He wasn't really a volume shooter. However, if a big is able to even be any kind of threat from three, I think that makes you feel better in terms of what he could do in terms of opening up, space for your offense. And I think just as well, I think that even though the game has opened up, if you will, where those traditional back to the basket guys aren't really what you might need. I think that a player like Ayton is still a guy that any team would love to have, and I think they did a really great job in sticking to their guns and drafting him, because I think there were so many people coming out and saying, oh, they've got to take Doncic. They've got to take Doncic. And then, as Kory mentioned, with the prior relationship between Doncic and Kokoshkov, I think, just sticking to their guns and taking Ayton, I think it was the right move.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Ayton. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball is still kind of a question mark. I mean, he's a decent rim protector. He's got to just get slightly better. He looked a little bit out of shape early on in Summer League. Personally, I thought he looked kind of slow. He got better, I think, throughout Summer League. As you mentioned, I mean, his offensive side of the game is what catches your eye. He obviously didn't shoot a ton from outside, but he did shoot 34% on like the one attempt a game I think he had or whatever. So he offensively, what you like, 20 and 11 in college. This is my hot take. I mean, not really hot take, but this is my guy for Rookie of the Year. I think DeAndre Ayton is going to win Rookie of the Year. I just like the pairing of him and Devin Booker. I think they needed a center. I mean, they've been kind of bouncing around. Tyson Chandler. They tried Greg Monroe for those 20 games or so, and Alex Len obviously kind of fell apart out of the rotation late in the season. So this is their guy, like you said, Dennis. They stuck to their guns. They went after the guy that they wanted. And I don't know how much this comparison works, but I feel like DeAndre Ayton is almost a more athletic, better jump shooter than like Dwight Howard. Like I compare him to Dwight Howard slightly. Just not as good defensively.
Well, talking about that, what would be best case scenario for Ayton, if he were to hit his peak and, to max out his capabilities?
I saw somewhere that like a comparison was like a Patrick Ewing, and somewhere like that, or like a Patrick Ewing, a DeMarcus Cousins, like a David Robinson that's not as good of a defender. Like I think those are what you kind of want to look at for Ayton. You don't want to look at Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid's a guy that like is touted for his defensive ability, and then he's good offensively. Where you want to look at guys that are more offensively inclined at center. And, Patrick Ewing was great at offense. DeMarcus Cousins, when healthy, is the best, if not, or one of the best, if not the best offensive center in the league. I think offensively, those are his best case scenarios, but he still has a really good shot to be a good two-way big.
Yeah, I would say just the ceiling would be that, he just gives the Suns a more credible inside threat that they haven't really had. I think, Tyson Chandler, I think he is a very useful NBA player, and he sticks to what he does well. However, I think not only can Ayton do what Chandler does offensively, I think he could definitely exceed it. And, for the Suns, it's just about, at the end of the day, you have Booker who can score. TJ Warren is a really effective offensive player. And I think if Ayton can just be a great offensive player for them, I think that raises their ceiling as a team drastically. I think in terms of the ceiling, I mean, there's no reason to believe that he couldn't be, based on what we've seen. I mean, there's no reason to believe he couldn't be a future All-Star, future MVP candidate, future, just great player in the league for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like my comparison now anymore. I think his ceiling is kind of, I don't know, because you have to see how the defensive side of the ball comes along. I mean, because offensively, realistically, he could become kind of like Karl-Anthony Towns. He could be that kind of offensive, a guy who can do a little bit of everything. Maybe not be the same kind of outside shooter as Karl-Anthony Towns, but definitely around the mid range. And then if he gets some kind of defensive ability, like I guess he like some kind of hybrid between like Karl-Anthony Towns and DeAndre Jordan, something like between there would be my ceiling for DeAndre Ayton.
Moving on from Ayton, they also selected Mikal Bridges with 10th overall pick via the Philadelphia trade, where they traded J.R. Smith and Miami's 2021 pick. What were your thoughts on bringing in Bridges and trading that future Miami pick, which could end up being a possibly high pick depending on what happens with the Heat?
I think that the pick got a little overblown with what it's going to be, but I'm really excited for Bridges. I thought that was a slam dunk to get a guy like him. Just a guy that does just plays good basketball like 99% of the time. Yeah, he's a little bit older. Yeah, his ceiling might not be as big, but he's got a really high floor, and just his length, his ability to defend, I think is going to be huge for this team. I think that he's going to be able to slot in next to any one of our wings and play really well. I think he had quite possibly the highest floor of anyone in the draft. Maybe one or two guys, but I like his floor is ridiculous, I think, and I'm super excited for Bridges. I thought that us being able to get him was like, well, it was a very big, it was a game changer, I guess is what I should say. Adding him to that, giving us more flexibility on the wing, giving us more defense and outside shooting. It's exciting.
Yeah, I agree with 100% with everything he said. I think there's a lot made of Bridges' age. However, I think that's what the Suns need. They just need a guy that is going to come in and play solid for them. I think they've got all the young guys they need in the sense of, the 19, 20-year-olds. And I think it's good for them that they've gotten a guy that's won a lot. He won a lot in his college career. I think he's proven that he's willing to do what it takes to win. And in addition, he's a good shooter and he plays defense, and those skills are always useful on an NBA roster.
I loved this trade for the Suns. I think Bridges is going to be a very solid wing. I think it also lets them play more small ball. Like we may see Josh Jackson play the 4. This was a good move for me. And like you mentioned, this is a guy who's obviously won before from his college days. I think he's it's hard to gauge on who's NBA ready, but I feel like he's got the NBA body already. Obviously, you can always get stronger, and these kids are still so young. They're probably going to add. I know Nick has mentioned this on previous podcasts that you hit like your second growth spurt as a man, like between the ages of I don't know, what'd you say, like 23 to 25, something like that?
Yeah, you start to put on more muscle and just it stays on a little bit easier.
Right. So, and he's already got some size to him. So for me, I see that. I see him as a wing, and I like that. The jump shot is steady and consistent. So for me, Bridges, I think, was a really good pick, a really good trade to get. And I think he's going to be a guy who makes an impact right away.
Yeah, I definitely like the Bridges pick. I'm just interested to see what'll happen with that Miami pick. I know the Heat, it's kind of really hard to gauge if they're going to stay competitive, blow it up, or whatnot. We really have no idea what Pat Riley's thinking. But moving on from there, Elliot Okobo, who they drafted 31 overall. Obviously, some people mentioned he could have first-round talent if he played college basketball. I know a lot of fans were excited about this pick. So what are your thoughts on drafting the point guard in the second round?
Akobo is really exciting. I am I'm pretty high on him. I think his jump shot looks great. His vision looks great. Watching him in summer league also just added to that excitement. He didn't necessarily have mind blowing stats or anything, and he ended up getting an eye injury and missing a couple of games. But just the passes that he was attempting, he had this kind of like this skip pass that he was doing that's like was accurate and looks really exciting. Crisp passes, smart decisions, and his jump shot looks great. He's gonna take a little bit of time, take a little bit of work. He started out as a shooting guard, and then kind of started getting transitioned into a point guard. I think he's a guy that can play alongside a traditional point guard as an off-ball guy, or play as your primary ball handler next to Devin Booker, or your point guard next to Devin Booker, however you want to say that, and help space, gets good passes, great. I'm excited. I am beyond excited, actually.
Yeah, I in watching the draft, I didn't really know much about Akobo. I know that there were a lot of people that were shocked that he lasted that long in the draft, and were very they were very happy that Phoenix took him, in the sense that somebody finally took him. As David said, in just looking at some of the, I tried to watch a little bit of video on him. He's got a nice jump shot, and it looks like he can just score, which again, that's a useful tool for the Suns. He's got good length, and I think he fits in nicely with what they're trying to do, which is to build something. And I think having a young guard like that, hopefully they'll give him a chance to develop, and they'll give him a chance to play and make mistakes, and just find his way in the NBA.
Loved this pick. One of my buddies is a Phoenix Sun fan, which is weird. We live in New York, and you don't just see Sun fans up here often. But he's a Suns fan, and we were talking about the draft on draft night, obviously. And when Okobo was drafted, he was like, who the F is this guy? And I was like, he's not bad. Like, this is one of like the better point guards who, has kind of fell in the draft. I know that in the French league in May, he had like a 44-point game against, I want to say Monaco. I'm not positive who he played against, but I remember watching some highlights from that game. He looks good. He can shoot, he can score. The point guard position for the Phoenix Suns is something that they're lacking, and I really think Okobo could be, that guy. I'm not sure if it's going to be him at the start of the season, but come late December, January, if he can put up the offensive numbers and just be a decent pick and roll point guard for a DeAndre Ayton and helps get Devin Booker going, I think he's really going to be a key guy going forward for this Phoenix Suns team from the point guard position. I just like the upside, and him falling this low, and the Suns needing a point guard, it seemed like a no-brainer for them to draft him.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a guy to keep an eye on. Igor's probably going to do some great work with him. But any thoughts on the Suns' last pick of the draft, George King, 59 overall?
He's going to be a two-way guy, probably G League a bit. Looks kind of similar to how like PJ Tucker looked when he came out of college and kind of had to go overseas. And I know there are some Suns fans that hope maybe he could try and do a little bit of that. PJ Tucker is a fan favorite, and we miss him every day. But end of the second round, you take a flyer on a guy. We took a flyer on Alec Peters last year. Now he's playing over in Moscow. So, maybe he can do some stuff and get some play time in the regular season. But, you just got to take a flyer on some of these guys, and that's what he was.
Any thoughts from you, Dennis or Kory?
I mean, I looked up. I tried to find some information just in preparation for the podcast. Um, Looks like he's a good athlete out of Colorado. He had some big games for Colorado last season. As David said, I think they have him listed as a two-way player on Basketball Reference. So it's worth a flyer. I mean, he's the last pick for the franchise in terms of this year's draft. So I think they just taking a swing on a guy. I mean, there's a chance he could develop into something good for them. But there you go.
I got nothing.
Moving on from there, looking at player acquisition in terms of trade, they picked up Darrell Arthur and Raquan Holmes. Obviously, Arthur, I'm not 100% sure. David would probably know a little bit better. Are they looking to buy him out, or they're going to keep him around as a locker room guy?
He's going to get bought out. We were able to save a little bit of money by doing the swap for Arthur for Dudley. And he's going to get bought out. It's kind of they're probably going to hold on to him through training camp because he needs the extra body. But he's just going to get bought out. He's not going to he's not going to play minutes. He's not going to be on the roster for the regular season.
Gotcha. And talking to some Denver guys earlier in the season, it looked like he could potentially be washed and dealt with a lot of injuries. But Raquan Holmes, getting him from Philadelphia, what are your thoughts on him being a solid young big that could definitely back up Ayton and find some good minutes on the Suns?
Yeah, Rashawn is really, really interesting. Not the highest IQ guy. He's showing some stuff. Going to go up for some dunks. Going to go up for some blocks. I'm all good with that. Get some energy guy and just see what happens. Didn't give up anything for him really, and good. You should go for that and see if showed some flashes here or there. Maybe he becomes a guy that you bring back after the year, maybe not. You need someone to fill up that role Tyson Chandler will play only so many games before he's just old and has to sit out. And that's kind of just what happens with him. So you're going to need someone to back up Ayton. A lot of people thought maybe you bring back Allen Williams. He got released early in the offseason, but Rashawn Holmes, we'll see what we have in him. But, if all he does is go up for lobs and try and block some shots that he shouldn't, I'm all in. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Holmes, I really like Holmes. I think, unfortunately, he kind of got lost in Philadelphia's rotation because of their addition of, Ilyasova, and they already had Amir Johnson, and obviously Embiid was the starter. But this is a guy who he had a rough shooting season this past season. However, in 2016-17, he shot 35% from three. Now, he's not a volume shooter by any stretch. But again, I think he's got an ability to play down low and bang and rebound, but as well offensively, he does have the ability to step outside and be a credible threat from deep, even though he might not. He'd obviously have to make a few before you'd get out there and challenge him. But I think the Suns just adding another big guy that has the potential to be a shooter. I think that bodes well for their offense. And I think Holmes as well defensively. I think he is also a solid player. And as David mentioned, they didn't have to really give up anything to get him.
Yeah, I like the Holmes signing a lot too. I think you hit the nail on the head, Dennis, with him being lost in Philly. I mean, there's so many big guys in Philly that somebody was going to fall out, and it was Holmes. He plays hard. He plays with a lot of energy, and I don't know. He could play some big time minutes for this Phoenix Suns team. I think he will. Obviously, he's only 24 years old. Another young piece of this team, and I'm actually really excited to see what he can do with extended minutes.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice move. It's the type of move you make in a rebuilding situation. He could be a rotation piece moving forward, a backup big for Ayton, and kind of an insurance policy if he gets into foul trouble too. And like David mentioned, Tyson Chandler's not going to play 82 games, and he could probably learn some things from Chandler as well. Moving on from the trades, going to free agent signings, obviously the big splash move. Trevor Ariza, 1 year, $15 million, 3-and-D guy, seasoned veteran. kind of sends a message that the Suns are looking to be better this season. Thoughts on the big move for Ariza?
I'm a fan of Trevor Ariza. He hasn't had that much success not playing alongside a good playmaker. You see his best years were obviously when he was playing next to Kobe, and then John Wall, and then James Harden. I think with Devin, he'll be fine. And some people say this is an overpay. Yes, it's an overpay. I'm not gonna pretend like it's not, but you had to bring someone in, be a presence guy. It's only a year deal. We weren't going to use that space probably for anything else. So you just have to look at it that way. You don't have to look at it like, oh man, they're wasting all this money on him. And it's like, well, it was either that or we just sit on it and not do anything. So I'm good with that. He's a good locker room guy. He's going to be good for these young guys. I like Trevor Ariza though, so whatever. Maybe I'm biased.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ariza as well, and I think if they would have signed him to a 4-year, $15 million a year contract, I think that would have been an overpay in that sense. I think that it's good value for what he brings. And he's he's up there in terms of years in his career. However, this is a guy that he shot 37% from three on 7 attempts a game. He was usually defending the other team's best wing for the Rockets. And, he's proven that he's a very dependable guy that has avoided injuries for most of his career. He's had very good injury luck, and he's proven he can play minutes. He is a solid rotational guy in the NBA, and I think he gives the Suns a calming presence on the court. I think he's a veteran that can, say hey, come on guys, let's relax, let's get into this. And I think he provides, he gives them just another option in terms of a wing that can spread the floor and can provide defense on the other team's best guy.
So for me, this goes two ways. The first way, it's damn, Trevor Ariza, you really took the bag over a chance to possibly come back to Houston and win a title. But the money aspect, if you want to get your money, and like you guys both mentioned, he's a little bit older, his career is on the back nine, if you will. So he's securing the money, and as you mentioned, David, I mean the Suns, why not? If you want to give out a 1-year deal, why not? Sitting on the money doesn't do anything. If you want to give it out for 1 year, bring in a vet who can maybe help coach a Bridges or a Josh Jackson at the wing position, teach them a thing or two about how to play defense or whatnot. I am completely okay with this from the mentorship part of it. He is going to be an upgrade. He is going to be, I'm not sure how much he's going to play. He'll probably still play a decent amount. At least I would expect him to. He can still hit the three unless it's Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals.
Savage.
Zing. Yeah, I mean, this is a good signing. It's. I mean, he's not going to be here next year. I think this is just a 1 year, get some money. He'll probably go back to trying to chase a ring with some sort of contender next year. But for 1 year, I think it's a good thing for the Phoenix Suns. Yeah,
and it probably makes Devin Booker happy having another starting NBA player in his team that can kind of relieve the load and help them pick it up defensively. Moving on from there, though, they Isaiah Canaan back in Phoenix, veteran minimum. Thoughts on Canaan being back?
Yeah, the talk originally when he got cut was that he for sure at least had a training camp spot. This might be just see if he's good to go and can be on the training camp roster, or can go to the regular season roster, I should say, instead of just training camp. We'll see. No idea what we're going to do at point guard. We have Brandon Knight. We still have Shaq Harrison. We guaranteed his contract. He's probably going to get some solid minutes, and so is Akobo. So not entirely sure if there's a spot on the roster for Cannon, but he deserves at least a shot for how he played in a short amount of time last year with us.
Yeah, I think they need more depth at point guard, and it just makes sense to bring him in, if anything, just to see if he could potentially give them a viable backup or be a third point guard.
Yeah, why not? Take a risk. It's not even a risk. It's a low risk. It's a guy who can fill out the roster. Brandon Knight seems to keep getting hurt, right? He's been hurt the last couple of years, the last 2 years. He's had injuries.
Year and a half.
What'd you say, David?
Year and a half.
Year and a half, right? Okay, that makes sense. So who knows what he's got left? Who knows how he comes back? You obviously always hope and expect the player to come back to be at least somewhat of what they used to be. But I think this is an okay move. I kind of like Isaiah Cannon. He's nothing special, but he's a good second to third string point guard.
Yeah, you take a flyer on another young point guard, see what happens. Like David said, that point guard situation is going to be interesting. But the big re-signing of the offseason, Devin Booker getting that max contract, 5 years, $158 million. Thoughts on the big deal for Devin Booker?
Yeah, he deserved it. We could have theoretically waited until he was a restricted free agent last year, but made it pretty clear that we were going to offer him the max extension. Some owner comments here or there that people were a little worried about, and especially after the whole Tyler Ulis thing, people were freaking out, but he wasn't going to turn down $158 million. I don't think anyone would. So it's great that he's locked up, and it just shows his little bit of commitment. He didn't wait until he was a restricted free agent. He didn't do anything else. He didn't do that and then sign a tender. He's here. We got him for 5 more years at least. So we gotta build around him and get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he's just a guy. He was a steal in the 2015 draft. They got him 13th overall, and he's improved every single year statistically. And I think as well, just in what we saw last season, I think David mentioned this earlier, but him as a playmaker, I think he is. I think a lot of people mistakenly think he's just a scorer. However, I think he demonstrated last season an ability to make plays for guys and get be more in control of the offense. And I think I think Devin Booker's got a chance to be really, really good. So I think it was a no-brainer for them to lock him up.
Had to do it. I think you guys pretty much said it all. This is the face of your franchise. It's a kid who dropped 70 points, a short time ago. This is a kid you want to build around. You want to bring in other young guys. You want to try to attract future stars to Phoenix. Obviously, they've tried in the past. They had a meeting with LaMarcus Aldridge a couple of years ago, Blake Griffin. They've been trying to get another star, and the idea is that you can pair another star possibly with Devin Booker. And the way to try and show stars that Devin Booker will be there long-term, give him the long-term deal. So this, for me, this is what the Suns had to do.
Yeah, this was much of a no-brainer, and I'm sure David could say this. A lot of Suns fans were relieved that he didn't push this out to next year or, like you mentioned, sign a tender. So he's locked up to be a Sun moving forward. But looking at departures, they lost Jared Dudley, Alfred Payton, Alex Len, Tyler Ulis, Daniel House, Alec Peters, and Alan Williams. Out of these guys, are the Suns going to miss any of them substantially?
Probably Jared Dudley, which sounds silly, but
I like to hear that. I'm a Nets fan.
he's a great locker room guy. When he is out on the floor, he's not the most in shape guy, but he does smart plays. He has his guys back, and he's out there to play. He'll pass. It seemed like if we ever had issues with being stagnant on offense, you would put him in there, and the ball would get moving a little bit more. Some threes would start dropping a little bit more. I'm sad to see him go again. It was nice having him for the second stint. I would have been fine if he just retired here, after another year or so. But, it makes sense. Save a little bit of money here and clear a little bit of space to get, minimum deal, get some guys who can probably contribute a little bit more than what Jared was able to do throughout the season.
I don't think they really miss any of those guys. I would agree with David 100% about Jared Dudley. I think with Alex Lynn, I think it was just time to move on. I think that he hadn't really met expectations for them as a franchise, and I think I think just they're a team that I think they're focused on some new guys coming in and getting the chance to see what they have, and so I think as guys get into that restricted free agency market, guys that have been in the league for a short time, I think the Suns seem to be more willing to let guys take off and bring in new additions to the roster.
Yeah, I mean, losing Jared Dudley sucks at the point, like you guys mentioned. I mean, he's a leader. He's been around for a while. And you mentioned, David, how when it got stale at times with ball movement, you insert Jared Dudley and things started to pick up a little bit. And for me, I see this as you're subtracting, but you're adding, because you got rid of Jared Dudley, but then you have Trevor Ariza now, who's still a vet, who brings the same type of leadership, but can play better. No offense, Jared Dudley. Trevor Ariza is a better basketball player at this point in their careers, and probably throughout the entire. I'm not gonna go. This isn't about bashing Jared Dudley. So I think just think it's the right move for the Suns. You got rid of an older wing, 3-4 kind of hybrid kind of guy who really kind of had to play the small ball 4. He's a little bit slower now than he was back then. And you got Trevor Ariza to fill those shoes. So I don't think for the Suns you're really going to miss him that much.
Getting into the prediction portion of our show, starting 5 for the Phoenix Suns on opening night.
This is a little tough. It could go a couple of different ways. I think that we're running probably at the guards, Brandon Knight and Devin Booker. Devin Booker is the only lock right now. I think we're going to end up running one of TJ Warren and Josh Jackson next to Trevor Ariza. And we'll probably end up starting Trevor Ariza at the 4, which I think is a mistake. His best attribute is his perimeter defense, in my opinion. But we'll probably try running it. It seems like that might be the goal. And then, DeAndre Ayton's going to be starting at center. I'm a little worried that, Tyson might randomly start, but that's just because I have this thought in my head that we never start guys when we should, and that we won't start Ayton right away. But I'm pushing that to the back of my head a little bit and saying that we're just going to start Ayton because that's what needs to happen. That's what should happen. And I'm speaking it into existence right now.
I pretty much agree with you. I figured that they would start Ayton, TJ Warren, Ariza, Josh Jackson, and Devin Booker. I think this is just me personally. I would forego the traditional point guard and just, I think Josh Jackson and Trevor Ariza, I think those two guys could, easily, check another team's point guard if that's what they wanted to do. But it's difficult with this roster to really get a feel. I could see where Brandon Knight could get the starting nod. I could also see maybe they go super young and, let a Kobo start. But for me, this one just makes sense. I think TJ Warren, while not a great option at the 4, I think he could play at the 4. Because like David said, I think you want Ariza on the perimeter if you have the opportunity to do that. So I would like to see them go with kind of a small ball lineup in the sense of I love their depth at wing, and I think they should try to play those guys together as much as possible.
I'm going to butt in here real quick, and I agree on that. I think we're going to see a lot of wing play. The only thing with TJ is that when him and Josh were both on the floor last year, our offense was even worse than already the worst in the league. That's just the only reason why we're probably not going to see that. I think that Josh should probably start over TJ, but TJ probably still gets the nod. And TJ just cannot match up on 4s. That's unfortunately why Ariza will end up doing it. And that's frustrating as all get out. But that's probably what's going to happen.
Right. So my starting five, I think Brandon Knight gets the nod to start. I think they go with the traditional point guard. So it's Brandon Knight, Devin Booker. Small forward to me is tough. I think they're gonna go with TJ. No, Trevor Ariza has got to be the small forward. Scratch that. So, all right. So Brandon Knight, Devin Booker, Trevor Ariza. I think Josh Jackson plays a small ball 4. And then I think Tyson Chandler may get the nod at the start of the season, but I'm saying like within like probably a month and a half, DeAndre Ayton probably starts starting. But personally, I would start Ayton right off the bat.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to what you guys had. Knight, Booker, Ariza, Jackson, and Ayton. I think you go with Knight because you don't want to put too much pressure on Devin Booker to be the ball handler all the time with some of the other guys not being, solid ball handlers at this point in their career. And it would put a lot of pressure on him. So having Knight on there should make the offense run a little bit smoother. What would you say would be a position battle? In terms of the starting lineup, could be rotation. What's a big position battle for the Suns?
Well, the talk is that literally the only position that is guaranteed right now is Devin Booker starting. It's going to be really interesting to see the wing battle and where minutes go besides Devin. Backup point guard to start out is going to be really interesting. I think that Brandon Knight is just kind of going to be handed the starting 1 spot. And so seeing, if Shaq Harrison, he was able to play some good basketball at the end of the season, if he's able to keep going, if Kobo's able to show out a bit, that'll be very interesting. I think the goal is probably that, Devin will do playmaking and will be a ball handler, but he's not going to be the main ball handler. We're going to give him the option to, space it out a bit. And that's where I think also Josh helps out a lot. He's able to do some ball handling, create some looks for guys, and that makes it so you have a lot of movement, a lot of guys that can handle, and not just 1 or 2 guys that can. You're not just throwing it all on Booker. You're having more options there. But I think that wing battle, just how that works out, is the biggest thing. Bridges is going to be able to contribute right away. Trevor Ariza is a great wing defender. TJ Warren, to me, I love him. I love TJ. I don't like to talk smack or anything, but I feel like he's gonna be the odd man out. I thought that we were possibly gonna move him for some sort of point guard. That didn't necessarily happen. He's the only one of the guys that doesn't defend like the other 3, and Josh can't shoot either, but Josh can at least play make, which TJ is kind of a black hole in that sense.
Yeah, I also, that was kind of my thinking, was that the wing battle. However, I think another interesting battle, I think that based on when you look at the Suns roster and what they have, I think that there may be a battle to stay in the rotation between Bender and Chriss. I think now, again, there's a new coach coming in, so that could be different. However, it just seems like you have Ayton, you've got Rashawn Holmes, you've got Tyson Chandler still around. So it'll be interesting to see between Chriss and Bender, which of those guys continues to get, consistent minutes, and which of those guys is maybe on the fringe of the rotation.
The first positional battle is at the point guard position. Obviously, this team is still looking for their point guard. So, it's Brandon Knight, Okobo, and then Isaiah Cannon will probably finish third no matter what. But I think it's going to be between Okobo and Brandon Knight battling. And then, like you guys mentioned, the wing, it's an interesting position at the wing. They got a lot of guys: Trevor Ariza, TJ Warren, Bridges, Josh Jackson. I know a couple of these guys can play a small ball 4, but these guys are all slated as wings. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Trevor Ariza starts at the 3, but maybe, halfway through the year, they decide they want to go fully young because they know Trevor Ariza is going to leave in the offseason anyways. So maybe they make him a glorified 6-man, or maybe they move him to the 4. So I think for me, it's the small forward and the point guard position.
Yeah, you guys made a great point about the wing. I think it's going to be interesting to monitor how Igor does with a minute rotation there with all the guys and how many minutes we see from Bridges and whatnot. But give me your breakout starter and your breakout bench player.
Breakout starter, I think that, you know, this is really tough. This is really, really tough. I'm gonna say that Josh ends up starting, and he's able to really turn it on and look like, a really great sidekick to Booker. He's not gonna be asked to do a ton of scoring. He's gonna go out there, play defense, and that will put him in a starting position sooner rather than later. And I think that he's going to continue to work on his game and get better, and he's going to be a really solid player and a really breakout starter this season.
Yeah, I'll probably take the boring answer when I was looking at the roster and just say Devin Booker. I think a lot of people seem to be. You see a lot more on Twitter. I think people fighting against the idea that Devin Booker's not a superstar. I think there's a lot of numbers to back up that he is. In terms of a bench player, based on what we've talked about, he might end up starting. But I would go with Brandon Knight. I think he's got a lot of Lou Williams to his game. I think he's he's not the biggest guy, but he has shown during his time in the league that he can score. He can be a consistent scorer. I think in the 2014-15 season, he was 19 a game, which it's hard to say if he'll get back to that. Probably not, due to some of the injuries he's dealt with. But I think he could be a spark for the Suns off the bench if that's where they choose to have him. So I think Brandon Knight could really give them a presence off the bench if that's where they choose to play him from.
Brandon Knight has certainly gotten dunked on a lot.
That DeAndre Jordan one is always going to stick out.
Yeah. So for me, I think my breakout starter is the easy answer in Devin Booker. And I'm going with Devin Booker because I think because of the guys around him now, obviously Trevor Ariza, my pick of rookie of the year, DeAndre Ayton, Brandon Knight possibly being healthy, what Okobo could be offensively, Josh Jackson hopefully taking some progression. I think Devin Booker is actually going to have a decent supporting cast around him. Not great. They're not going to be a fantastic defensive team, but I think offensively he'll have enough pieces around him to kind of take some of the stresses of the offensive load off. And we actually may see him be, a little bit more efficient because he's got some options around him.
Yeah, honestly, as Kory would say, copy and paste of what he just said. I think a lot of the improvements we're going to see from Booker is going to be based off his teammates and what he's learned over the last 2 seasons. And his playmaking, I think, is going to take another step, having some shooters and some players around him that can really score the ball. And breakout bench player, I'm going to go with Mikal Bridges. I think, they don't make that trade unless they see something they can get from this guy. And like David mentioned earlier, his floor is very high. So I think he's ready to come in and help his team. And if they're going to play so many wings in the starting lineup, they're going to need someone to come off the bench that can do a couple different things.
I'm going to roll with Marquese Chriss. I'm a glutton for punishment, but I think he's going to be I think he's put in the work. I think he had a really big wake-up call. I think guys like Booker and Jackson are gonna demand the best from Chriss. I think Chriss is going to look good. I don't think he's going to start, but I think he's going to go in there, play some backup 5 here or there, and I think, obviously, just said glutton for punishment. I'm setting myself up for disappointment, but I think that good coach, good players around him. Wake up call. He's gonna go back to what we expected from him.
I mean, the potential and talent's there. It's about putting it together. If he has a good offseason, like you said, new coaching staff coming in and the other improvements on the roster, maybe it could help Chriss. But getting into the win prediction, best case scenario for the Suns this upcoming season.
Best case scenario is about 36 wins, and that's if Ayton just shows up right away. Doesn't necessarily demand touches, but gets enough to where he looks like a rookie of the year. It'll be tough for a big, especially not being the main focus of offense, because that'll definitely be Devin Booker. Jackson takes a bigger leap, looks like he's in the makings of a true top two-way player, and Trevor Ariza, plays great as a stretch four alongside our other wings who are able to step up and just create this versatility. I think we max out at 36 wins. I think we're probably our best bet's right around low 30s, but it would take a bit, but you have Devin Booker, so you're already a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I said I thought a pretty close number. I thought 35 wins, best case scenario. That's just if they're able to get more from their young guys and continue to develop some of those guys. 35 wins.
I mean, that's best case scenario. Wow. I guess that is best case. So for me, I think best case scenario would be 32 wins. And this is still the Western Conference. They're gonna have to play against a lot of really good teams, and I still don't know how the defense holds up. So I'm gonna say best case scenario is 32 wins.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 34 wins as best case scenario. I think, Ayton's rookie of the year, Devin Booker takes another jump, Josh Jackson improves, and you just see a lot of player development. Igor puts in a good system, and the Suns look like they're actually have a nice young core moving forward, and they can have faith in this team. But worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario is that, Josh Jackson takes a step back on offense, and with his jump shot specifically, his playmaking and defense will still be good, but he's just not able to hit consistent jump shots. Ayton gets frozen out at times because there are so many other guys that are trying to do stuff with the ball. We have no solid option at point guard because Okobo still has a lot to do, and Okobo still has a lot of growing to do, and Brandon Knight is Brandon Knight, and we don't ever have a reliable guy to play at the four because Josh Jackson is better as a wing. Trevor Ariza's best attribute is wing defense, and TJ Warren cannot play small ball four at all. Neither can Mikal Bridges, probably, and Dragan Bender and specifically Marquese Chriss, but also we're just not able to get good enough minutes for Dragan Bender to make up for anything. And we're still low 20s in the wins.
Yeah, I'd say the worst case scenario would just be that they are what they were last year, just a 21 win team that is tanking. And I don't think they want to tank. However, being that they're going to be in the Western Conference, I think the worst case scenario would be that they that they just maybe they throw in the towel early and decide to go for another high draft pick. I think also with the worst case scenario would just be that they don't look for minutes for the young guys to try and see what they have. I think while Ariza, I think it's important that they play him. At the same time, I think it's important that they get a good look at Josh Jackson and Mikal Bridges and some of those younger guys to just see what they have. And I think the worst case scenario for them would be to just maybe play those veteran guys too many minutes, and or if they're just not able to get a lot of wins in the Western Conference, I think that could really hurt their chances at winning even 30 games.
Worst case scenario for me is 25 wins. I think it would be, Devin Booker shows up. Maybe Ayton doesn't play up to standards. Josh Jackson struggles. The guys like Bender and Chriss show that they're basically not even rotational players. Maybe the point guard position becomes a serious issue in which maybe Brandon Knight gets hurt. And the other guys to step up, and this team just looked kind of like a train wreck again.
Yeah, pretty much everything you guys said. I think 25 wins. The point guard situation is an issue. Defense is still worse in the league, and then the young guys don't make that jump. But actual prediction for next season.
Like actual prediction, like what do I think is going to happen?
Yes, sir.
All right, so my actual prediction is that we're gonna start turning it around. It's gonna be a little bit slow. It's not gonna be as big of a jump as Philly was able to make this past year, but we're trying to do things a similar style to them. Get some solid veterans. They got JJ Redick last offseason. Kind of in that scenario, we brought in a guy like Trevor Ariza, a floor spacer, been around the league, that kind of stuff. I think that's going to have a huge impact on the guys. I think that, Josh Jackson's going to do really well playing alongside Devin Booker more than he did last season. With Booker being out, he got a lot of run alongside TJ Warren and Troy Daniels. And, I think that being able to play alongside Devin Booker is just going to help him grow even more. I think Ayton he's going to have to do some dirty work to get touches to begin with, but him, Josh, and Booker are going to create a really dynamic core. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but we'll start to see it this year, and it's going to be really exciting. It's going to be rough at times, but we're going to be we're going to be closer to like early 30s win wise than early 20s.
Yeah, I actually, just thinking about it, I like the best case scenario for the Suns. So I actually think they get to 35 wins. I think they go 35 and 47. I think that this
spicy.
is their, I think this is their chance to, I think Booker is going to play well. I think Ayton is going to be good for them. I think Okobo is going to be surprising. I think Bridges will be a solid player for them. And I just think with that much depth at the wing in terms of guys that can, the ability to switch, I think that the Suns are going to be a tough out for teams. I don't think they're going to be the joke that they became at certain points last season. So I actually like them winning 35 games.
Wow. My actual prediction is going to be 30 wins. I think Ayton wins Rookie of the Year. I think Booker looks just as good as he's looked any other year, but progresses, becomes more efficient because of the guys around him. I think Okobo at some point cements himself as at least the temporary point guard of the future. I think Josh Jackson gets slightly better, and I think Bridges fits right in and probably actually plays a bigger role later in the season than Josh Jackson. Ariza helps mentor these guys, and we see the Suns actually take the first step in the right direction by getting 9 more wins than last season.
I guess I'm a little pessimistic. I think 29 wins. I do think the Suns are going to improve a lot, and you're going to see improvement in the players and overall style of play, but I think the West is just so good it's going to be hard to get over that 30-win mark, so right on the cusp at 29 wins. Moving on from there, though, the truth, what emoji would represent the Suns for you?
A hard-hitting question.
Yeah, it's tough.
Which one is the one that seems like it's dying on the inside the most? No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go with the classic love for my podcast. It's going to be the cheese emoji partly because of the infamous Charles Barkley rant about cold cheese, and partly because it'll be firmer cheese because it won't be cold and gross.
What do you got, Dennis?
Oh God, I think we covered this last time. I don't really know the emojis that well. I would say maybe I'd go kind of cheesy on you. I would go a sun with a little bit of clouds in front of it. With some clouds in front of it. I think that's it right now. I think the Suns are on their way. I think that right now, I think if it's cloudy in the sense that I think they're still trying to figure out the guys that they can build around. I think Booker is one of those guys, and it's just a matter of if Ayton Bridges and Josh Jackson are the rest of that core for them moving forward.
So I didn't know I have new emojis. So I recently got a new phone. So I just realized that there's new emojis. So this is really fun for me. There's the emoji that's got like the finger to the mouth, like basically saying like shh. And I'm gonna use that one because like the Suns might not actually be a dumpster fire. Like just be quiet. Like let's just see what this team actually becomes.
I like it. I got the fingers crossed because I think, the Suns are hoping that Ayton and Josh Jackson work out. And like David said, that's their young core with Devin Booker moving forward, and they're in a really good position. But league pass rating for the Suns, 1 through 10.
Well, I'm a terrible person to ask about that because I'm going to be watching all 82 games because, but I think that your favorite team's not watching. Click on, see what the Suns are doing. It's a close game. Keep at it and keep watching it because we're gonna do some fun stuff, especially just because Devin Booker is really fun to watch. And even if we are getting blown out half the time, we will get back into it. And it's solely because Devin Booker is just really good at basketball. He hit some really dumb shots last year. Hit a really good one to force overtime against Milwaukee. And just because of him, we're watchable. You don't want to watch us in favor of your favorite team, but give it a shot. That's what I'm going to say. I don't know what number that is, but that's what I'm rolling with.
I'd go 6 out of 10 just for the fact you got Booker, you've got Ayton, and there's always a chance that the Suns are going to fight. So I would go 6 out of 10.
Wow. 6 out of 10, huh?
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna tie my high with. Oh wait, what was my high 2.5, or was it 3.5?
No, I think you've already hit in like 4.
It's 4.5. Eesh, I'm getting up there. I'm gonna say 3.5 for the Suns. Keep in mind, I'm East Coast. I go to bed somewhat early. I'm not gonna watch a ton of Sun games either. So I'm gonna say 3.5. I am interested to see what Booker and Ayton look like. But aside from when they play the Pacers twice a year, I won't be catching that many Suns games. I don't believe they have that many national televised games either, if I'm correct.
I'm going with 5.5. I think this is a pretty young and exciting team. It should be a lot of high-scoring games, and I want to see what happens with obviously Devin Booker taking another step, Ayton being the number 1 overall pick, and Josh Jackson's very intriguing. So 5.5 for me. I think that's my high so far. But what TV show would you watch over the Suns? Obviously, David, you're the Suns fan, so it's going to be a really tough choice for you. Just let's hypothetically have a gun was to your head. You had to pick a show.
Hypothetically, if I was going to watch a show over the Suns, oh man.
I told you this was going to be the toughest question of the show.
This is really tough. Yeah, man. I'm trying to think of like what shows I actually watch. I'll go ahead and roll with Bob's Burgers. That's comedy. It's lightheartedness, and if you're crying because the Suns are losing, then you need something to cheer you up.
I would probably go with. I don't know. I mean, I love basketball, so I've watched as bad as the play is. Like, I'll watch the Korean basketball league if I can't watch anything else. TV show though, I would probably say, I don't know. Gosh, I hate this. Maybe if a new season of Daredevil comes out on Netflix, I'd probably watch that. So maybe, yeah, I'll go with that.
A TV show I'd watch over the Suns. Stranger Things. I have not finished that show. I have not even watched more than the first 3 episodes. So maybe if the Suns were on and I wanted to pick up on a show, I'd pick Stranger Things. I gotta save my really good shows. Like for you guys are just hopping on as guests. Like we gotta do 30 of these, and I gotta keep, like The Office and all my good shows for the late. So for me, it's Stranger Things.
Shout out to Kory for being terrible at finishing shows. I think this is like the 4th show he's mentioned that he hasn't even got past the first season. But for me, I'm gonna go with Prison Break. I've already watched the whole thing once, and if they, I think they added some new episodes, but it's not that great of a show. Suns aren't top league pass thing, and like Kory said, we got a lot of teams to go through. But that wraps it up for today. Any last thoughts on the Suns you guys want to get out there?
The Suns, they're not going to be the best team in basketball, but give them a shot if you're just a general watcher, and then come check out the Sunny and Phoenix podcast, where we'll talk about it every week, and we'll talk about how either dysfunction or function, what's your junction, or something like that. So do that.
Like
Plug.
And I would just say I think it'll be interesting to see what moves they potentially make during the season. Tyson Chandler's an expiring contract. So that could be a piece that they try to move, especially considering, there's always a chance that maybe they are doing better than they thought, and maybe they can swing some kind of deal to give up a couple of young guys in exchange for, a solid all-star type player. Because it seems like they haven't been able to get a free agent, a big-time free agent. So maybe swinging for the fences in terms of trading, like for OTG's Hot Take Marathon, I suggested that Jimmy Butler would be traded. So that could be an interesting it'll be interesting to see if the Suns could potentially get someone during the season, just based on the assets that they have.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up. David, a pleasure having you on the show for the first time. And Kory and Dennis, as always, great to speak basketball with you guys. You can check out the show on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, and Dash Radio. Have a great night, everyone.
Peace out, knuckleheads.